Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Wellness Chats. We meet on this platform to talk about things that matter to our communities. And today we're joined with Marin McCue, who is the founder of Dopeame. She's also an author and a podcaster. And most importantly, she is an amazing human being. Marin, welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here with you and share some things that I think are very important as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Marin, you might see the light in my room is a bit funky today, so I do apologize. You might see a green light in my glasses or something funny like that going on, but here we are. We're going to do this. We're going to do this despite of everything else. So
Wonderful.
yeah, in our previous wellness chats we've spoken a bit about self-confidence and self-acceptance quite a bit, but I think the most important steps in gaining confidence comes with accepting all the different versions of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I'm talking about the completely unique or the polar opposite sides of us, that sometimes we show the world one side, and sometimes we show ourselves one side. And I'd like to ask you, as an expert, what does it mean to embrace all the versions of yourself?
Mm-hmm. This is like my favorite topic right now. Really, what it means is that we are complex. Like you said, we have, maybe you show up one way when you're at work or with your family, and then behind closed doors, there's another part that surfaces. We've got the different versions of ourselves of just, the child within us, the adolescent within us. There's different states of being that maybe when you're really tired or really hungry, a different version of you appears. And there might be parts that, that you're scared of, or you don't understand, or that you really impulsively don't like. And what I have learned is that we need to include all of these parts. It's so, I'll speak for myself that I went through many years of seeing these different versions of myself, these different characters, and I had them kind of on a hierarchy of like, this is my best self. And then all of these other versions, these characters that appear when I'm triggered or I'm not in my best state, those are parts that I need to fix. And well, there's some truth in that. The problem is that when we start to demonize parts of who we are, they actually grow stronger. Or we think that we can cut something off, like, oh, I don't like this narcissist within me, so I'm just gonna like cut it off and pretend it's not there, or avoid it at all costs. But when we suppress parts of ourselves, they don't go away. They just start driving us subconsciously or unconsciously, so that we actually lose the ability to be aware and present to how we're showing up. So it's so important for us to learn how to include and appreciate and accept and understand these parts of us, and to also discern the difference between, acceptance as this passive mindset of this is just who I am. It's acceptance, and equally holding this notion that there are parts of me that I want to evolve, and that I do want to grow, and that I want to shift or change, and that these are not mutually exclusive concepts, that we can accept who and where we are right now, and also acknowledge there's parts of us that we want to change, that those actually go together. And that's a really important part of how this works. So one of the concepts that I love to share with people is, it comes from an American architect named Buckminster Fuller, and he coined the term tensegrity. And you can understand tensegrity by looking at different architecture, like a bridge. Bridges where there's a lot of space. It's not congested. There's not a lot of material, but there are opposing forces that lean in on each other that create this exponential, stronger structure. And what makes it strong is that the whole unit is working together. So instead of, this part over here needs to be able to hold a certain amount of load, and then this part needs to hold a certain amount of load or force, it's no, as soon as there's load or force in one area of the structure, the entire structure holds it. It's adaptable. right? And so what that shows us is that if you cut parts of the structure, it will collapse. It will not be this whole unit, this strong thing. And now we can take that to understand not only our physical body, but our emotional body or our mental body, where, you know, if we look at one part of ourselves and say, I don't like this part, I'm going to cut it off. Well, you just created a collapse in your entire structure. It's not adaptable anymore. So instead, we want to see that every single part of who we are has a purpose. And of course, yes, if we're too fixated on one part, then we're going to miss out on the beauty and the balance that can happen when we're actually holding all of the parts as one unit. So that's part of the work, is learning how to see where you've collapsed or what parts of you've shut down, so that you can reinvigorate them, bring them back into the whole structure, and then do the work to find that adaptability where everything is included.
You said it quite well, and I think it's so important. And when we started the Expert Connect, I also said that it's always about the whole human.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, it's
Exactly.
mentally, it's physically, it's spiritually, it's emotionally. We cannot heal only a certain part of a human and think that we're all going to get better as a whole, because we're so interconnected. So I love how you said
Yeah.
that. But how do we? And a lot of us struggle, like you said, a lot of us struggle with accepting the part of us that we probably don't like. But how can we? Are there ways or tactics that you can share with us that we can use to embrace the version or the part of ourselves that we have that impulse not to like so much?
Yeah. You know, the first thing that comes up is to be able to turn towards it and actually acknowledge it as it's even this part that you don't like, or this habit, or this version of you. It came to be because you were adapting to pain or to survival, right? So everything that you have within you right now is actually trying to protect you. And of course, some things become maladaptive and are no longer serving you. But when you can turn towards it and actually understand with that compassion that, like, even this part of me, it is trying to protect me. It is trying to defend me. It is trying to protect me from feeling certain pain that my body or my mind decided was too much at some point. And really what that does is it allows us to soften and be with it in a different way. You know, that it's not trying to harm you. This is not a malicious part of who you are. It's there because it's trying to protect you. And so that's the first step, is to be able to soften. And even, you know, it could be, you know, you just yelled at your husband, you know, you got really triggered, or you yelled at your child, or, you know, you made a comment and then after you're like, wow, that was really egoic, or that was really narcissistic. To be able to first soften and go, well, it's trying to protect me. Like that impulse is coming from a survival mechanism. And so when we can do that expands the container of our awareness to be able to sit with something. And then we can start meeting it, you know, and getting to know it in a different way. And that's where the acceptance comes in, is, well, it is what it is right now. This is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. This is what came out of me. You know, it's real. It is what it is. So we can accept it. We can use self-compassion to soften it, to thank it for trying to protect us. And then we're able to start evolving and really getting into, well, is this still serving me? Is this something that maybe I can rework or understand or see from a different perspective, so that I can slowly start to change my habits? And an important thing to understand is that anything that you've been doing impulsively for a long time, you've been repeating it. So awareness is one step, you know, being aware that it's not serving you and being able to acknowledge that it's this impulse or part of you is there to protect you. But another piece of it is to acknowledge that if I've repeated this pattern for years or months or, you know, whatever it is, I need to be patient and understand that this is probably going to come up many more times before I can repeat a new way of approaching it, to find this new way of being. You know, some things, yes, can switch and change in an instant, but most things need time. You need to repeat the new way. You need to continually come back to compassion and understand that as I see this cycle continue to play out, I need to be able to give myself space and time to start repeating a different cycle or a new direction.
Mm, mm. And I think sometimes I can speak for myself a little bit here. I I forget that some of the practices or the things that I do or how I react, maybe I don't like now, but I've built it over so many years, and it's not going to go away overnight.
Exactly.
Right? So I think we are always like so impatient. Oh, now I'm aware and it needs to go away or it needs
Mm-hmm.
to change. But I think that being aware and being able to work on that is critically important. And how does this practice affect the way we show up in this world?
Mm.
What are your thoughts on that then?
Well, for me, it's become a way for me to see the complexity in other people. The
Mm,
more I do this work and I reparent myself and I turn towards these parts and these impulses and I'm like, oh, like that was so hard for you. Like, that maybe a really strong fear impulse comes up and then I act out in a certain way. And to be able to sit with that impulse and just acknowledge how hard it is, and to really let myself feel it. The more I do this deep work, the more I'm able to look at other people and recognize, well, if I'm this complex, obviously they are as well.
mm,
And if they're showing up in a certain way that maybe I don't like or I don't approve of, that again, I can hold many different things at once. So this doesn't mean, telling someone, oh, whatever, it's okay. Yeah, you can say that racist thing, like you're imperfect. No, it's, still hold people accountable. You can still discern what is appropriate and what's not. But at the other end of the spectrum is also acknowledging that everyone's doing the best that they can, and everybody has a history and their own programming, and they've been repeating stuff, and they have many different versions of themselves, and I might be coming up against a version that triggers me or doesn't make me feel good.
mm,
And so I can see that and feel that and still see them as this perfect soul,
mhm,
that I can love them for who they are and still not agree with what they said or what they're doing. And again, what that does is it softens everything. So I don't need to react with rage. I don't need to hold on to toxic judgment. I don't need to be in the place of like, oh, I'm better than them. Look at me doing all this work.
mm,
It's to really just acknowledge them for who they are and show them love and give them space so that I don't come at them with this defensive nature that would just make them protective and defensive, where we're not going to create anything collaborative in that state.
mm. Mhm.
Mm.
Mm. No, I hear you, and I think the one thing as you're talking that came up for me is being authentic and being genuine and being your true self.
Yeah.
But I think the world we live in, and we're so heavily burdened with social media, and we're worrying about what other people are going to say about us and how we're showing up. And I think a lot of times in this quest to show up as our best selves, we are forgetting to show up as our own true self for us, but we are striving to show up for others. How can I show up so I look cool in front of Marin?
Mm.
So what would your advice be for people who are constantly looking for other people's approval and not being their true self?
Mm. Well, so first of all, even that concept of the true self is to recognize that it's not just, it doesn't mean just always showing up as your best self, right?
Mhm.
To me,
Yeah.
the true self is that ever steady witness, the observer that doesn't judge, that can kind of sit in the middle of this tensegrity structure as you watch yourself go like, oh, that was a little too far, or like, I'm being a little passive here. You're watching yourself move through life as a human, and it means you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to go in directions where after the fact you're going to recognize like, oh, that didn't serve me, or but there's also this ever steady part of you that's observing and loving and connecting with people at the soul level. So when I am in a conversation with someone or myself, when I'm recognizing I'm people pleasing, or I'm getting into a state of wanting to appear a certain way for other people, or worrying about, will other people accept me? To me, it's about getting into the high quality questions of, okay, well, when did this pattern start? Right? Is this just today? Am I just in a state? Am I just in a mood? Or is this something that's been recurring for a long time in my life? Right? And if it's been recurring for a long time, then again, you get into the contemplation of, okay, this isn't serving me anymore. And this is a part of me that's trying to protect me. This pattern develops out of an adaptation to avoid pain, or to help my parents feel less pain. You know, whatever it is, the first step is showing yourself compassion that this is not a malicious habit. It's not serving you anymore, but it is trying to protect you. And then you just get into questions of, well, is this something I still want? Is this serving me? And discerning that it's not just a bad habit, that sometimes, many times, it's important to get a pulse check from other people, to get feedback, or even just to be open to, I need to support other people. It's not just about me. But again, that tensegrity model shows us that if you are too fixated on that one side of who you are, I need to please other people, then you're no longer in this adaptive balance point. So maybe it's time to get more curious about leaning into its opposite of, what would it be like if I actually just followed what I feel like I need to do and not worry about other people? Now, that's not going to serve you potentially your entire life. That might take you in another extreme direction. But if you find you're a person who's very fixated on people pleasing and needing the support or the acceptance from others, then it's very possible that your practice for the next little bit is to lean into the opposite, to try to find that balance.
True. Very, very true. And do you think what are some barriers people will face as they're trying to accept their whole self? What kind of barriers do you think will show up?
Well, it's really uncomfortable. It's, you know, we avoid and we numb and we sedate and we keep ourselves busy for a very adaptive reason, because it is terribly uncomfortable to sit with the part of us that maybe, again, is the narcissist, or, you know, with what's going on in the world right now, to sit with the part of you that is the oppressor, the part of you that abuses yourself or abuses other people or manipulates or dominates. This is a really uncomfortable practice, to actually sit with it and feel the pain that you have become accustomed to cutting out of you or avoiding. So in the short term, it's a lot easier and more comfortable to just continue on the path that you're on. But in the long term, and if we're thinking about what's going to really serve the highest good for everybody, we need to be able to sit with these parts and integrate them and process them and learn to love them and accept them, so that they can evolve and stop being these parts of us that trigger us, or that we see in other people and then attack that other person, because it's really about what we're not willing to be with in ourselves. So, you know, having support in this process is so important, because if you spent many years or a lifetime building up a big door that says, do not enter, like danger, don't feel this emotion, don't meet this part of you, it can be really overwhelming initially to start taking down the tape and unlocking the locks to move into this part of you that is actually just a hurt, naive, innocent part of you that's been thrashing and acting out. You know, the scary part is just meeting the sensation that usually once it starts crusting, you do something to avoid it. But if you can learn how to be with it as it's building up and you're going, oh, this hurts, this feels uncomfortable, but you stay with your breath and you stay with your body and show yourself compassion and patience, it subsides. And at the other end, you can meet a part of you that is really not actually scary at all. It just means being willing to feel. And that's one of my favorite reminders, is we need to feel to heal. And for some people, feeling is really scary. And again, if you've practiced and repeated a different way of living for a long time, It's like learning a new skill, and
Mm.
being a beginner is uncomfortable.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. As you're talking, it reminded me when I took the yoga nidra session with you, and I
Yeah.
think you talked about the importance of truly being able to feel your emotions. And I think sometimes when we sit and meditate, we're always here, we're always in our head, but to be able to sink down where
Hmm.
and truly feel our emotions. When we started the program, I remember I used to be so scared. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even breathe. But I
Yeah.
think that practice truly, as you're talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, that was so important. That practice, the yoga nidra practice, was so important to be able to feel all your emotions and be able to connect
Hmm.
with true self. And I think as I'm talking to my family, my nieces and nephews, and we talk about meditation and things like that, we all share how some days we truly don't think, we just meditate, we just sit right in our head all the time because we are so scared to sink in that day, because
Yeah.
maybe whatever is going on in our lives or what's going on in the world or whatever it may be. But um um,
Hmm.
but I think what's more important, I think, for us to be able to address today is why has this topic become so important? I mean, what are we seeing today that calls us to seek a deeper understanding, and why is it important for us to be able to embrace the whole us, I guess, the whole self, all the different versions that we have, good or bad.
Yeah.
Um, why do you think it's so important today?
Mm. Well, our world is in a major upheaval right now. And for us to actually get to the point of unity and connection and support and even tensegrity culturally, worldwide, it always starts within. How can we create something in the manifest world if we can't have a deep visceral understanding of what it is within us, right?
Mhm.
And part of this is this dichotomy, this false dichotomy of these are the good people and these are the bad people.
Mm.
And now we're really starting to recognize, well, I'm good-ish and I'm bad-ish,
Mhm.
and I'm not completely innocent in this. Just because you're not aware that you're feeding into a system that is oppressing people doesn't mean you don't have responsibility to actually do something about it.
Mm.
Like, we all are playing a part in this. We all
Mhm.
are oppressors and we have been oppressed. And
Mm.
when we can learn how to find that merging and integration and tensegrity within all the parts within ourselves, that's when we're going to have the capacity to start building a new world where
Mm.
everybody is important and integral to what it is to be human and to be a part of this world that's actually functioning, and not elevating some people and oppressing others. That just, it doesn't work. And the more we're opening up to that, the more we're recognizing that this is what's true on one level is true on all levels. And before we can start really, again, making the difference in our world in a massive way, we need to keep, turning that finger inwards. If I can meet the oppressor within me and not blame it, I'm still not happy with it entirely. Like, that's not who I want to be. But I can see that it developed within me as an adaptation, and I don't want to be fixated on it and allow it to have free reign of my psyche or in my actions or in my thoughts. But I also can love it and understand that it's not entirely malicious.
Mm.
And then when I can do that, I can start looking at somebody else out in the world that maybe has been labeled as the oppressor,
Mm.
and be like, yeah, there is a lot of oppressor in this person, but this person has also been oppressed in different ways. And if I just get caught in blaming or saying you're at fault here, then I just have this toxic energy. I have rage within me, and then we're going to truly get into the place where we do have to literally burn everything down to rebuild. And that might be where we come to. But I think it's really worth first trying to come together and work together. And there will be parts that need to be burnt down and rebuilt. But there's also a lot of what's going on in the world that is working. And if we can allow that unconditional love and support to start spreading outward, that would be much less traumatic for the entire world than a complete burn down and rebuild.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was beautifully said, Marin. And I know you run an amazing podcast. You have an amazing program that you offer people. Before we let you go, I'd like you to share with us, how would our viewers be able to find you?
Yes, I have. I'm pretty active on my Instagram. So that's at Dopeame, Dopeame. My website is www.dopeame.com. I do have a podcast called The ABCs to Live Your Dope Life, and it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And really, over the next few months until 2021, I've cleared a lot of my schedule to take some space to continue doing some of the deep work that I'm doing, and to start building it into some more online programs and offerings. So I've got some pretty big ideas for what 2021 is going to look like, with the mindset of inclusivity and giving, because I've realized that that is what lights me up, and that nothing that I share I can't say it's mine. I'm a part of many parts, and I feel really honored that I get to work with so many amazing teachers, and that I get to read so many amazing books of people who've come before me, and that I get to play with integrating it and putting it into a model that is really about like, how far can I reach? How many people can I support? So yeah, follow along. I've got some pretty big ideas, but I also just really want to lean into collaboration. So if anybody, has ideas as well, or has a project going and they want me to be a part of it, or just want support, I'm very, very open and excited to connect with people who are intrigued by this work and are in the field of whether they're in the field of service, or they are at the point where they just need to receive and rebuild their anchor. That's the work that I love to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Marin. And as I was preparing for this chat today, I came across a quote from Brene Brown that I'd like to share. She says, "You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you're worthy of love and belonging."
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. All are worthy of love and belonging. So I'd like to close off with that. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. Thank you so much, Marin, for your time today. And stay safe and stay well, everyone. Thank you.